All right, and welcome to the Busy Executives podcast. I have the pleasure of introducing Dan Prado. Dan, we've gotten to know each other here over the last few months, and just your energy, your passion, your excitement, your love for people and love for life, and then how you get to extend that into the motivational speaking that you do, just the message that you get to deliver to businesses just really compelled me. And so I'm excited that our listeners get to listen and hear from you, and that you get to be a part of this podcast today. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure, Michael. It is an honor and a privilege to be with you, and I don't say that lightly. There is something about you that is unique. And when you meet so many different people, and I get to meet so many people, I have interviewed so many people in sales. You have too. We
Yeah.
we meet certain people, and when you meet them, you get that kind of split second to size it up, and you're usually pretty consistent about whether you called it right or not. Now we make mistakes sometimes, but when I met you, it just clicked, just
Hmm.
clicked. We sat there, you were on the other side of that little corner table, and we were talking about what we do, how we do it, who we do it with, and how much joy we get from it. And then we
Hmm.
talked a lot about the learning experiences, and that's
Yeah.
that's what I'm looking forward to sharing today. I think the most important thing is to keep that creative side of what we do upbeat.
Mm.
It's one of the things that people forget is that they've got a lot of archaic furniture up here.
Mm.
And, they have good innovative ideas. They're creative, but you gotta sell off that used equipment. You gotta sell that
Yeah.
furniture off. And when you do that, you're able to let something new, fresh in. Now, if that old archaic furniture has still been consistent in making you a tremendous amount of growth, don't shred it all.
Mm.
You got
That's
you got to
so
figure that
good.
out. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Gosh. So good. I
I know.
love it.
Yeah, yeah,
Dan,
yeah.
again, I've gotten to know you a little bit over the last few months, but do our listeners a favor and maybe just walk us through a little bit of your journey. I know you got to share a little bit of that with me here just this last week, but just kind of what helps you not only have the vision of who you are, but some of those lessons along the way.
Oh, thanks for asking. Yeah. So, everybody's got a story, and I love hearing people's stories. They're great, and I want to be asking about yours too. So you're not going to get off the hook here. Okay.
All right.
I
Sure.
always say, every time, when I see you, I always think of how I answer a phone call when people call me. I always say, "Welcome to the House of Champions. How can I help you win today?" And I've
I
had
love it.
customers just say, Danny, that is so awesome. I love it. Now, I had one customer thought it was kind of corny, and then afterwards he goes, I like it. I like it.
That's
And I said,
awesome.
well, I genuinely mean it. I want to
Mm.
help the champions of the world, right? So
Yeah.
my journey grew up in Northern California. Big family of 9 kids, 6 boys, 3 girls. Mom and dad stayed together forever. Dad since passed on. Mom's still living. I get to see her when I go in for business now. She's 88, and I get to still spend some time with her, and
That's
it's
awesome.
great, because it's coming, and you value those moments, and you want to take advantage of them. So I think the thing that probably instilled me the most, my mom and dad were hard workers.
Mm.
They my dad worked a couple jobs. He was a steel worker, blue collar guy, and just had a great work ethic. He was a former semi pro football player. And when I was a little boy, about 7 years old, and I can just picture it right now, walking into the kitchen at 4:30 in the morning, I could hear my dad. I could smell the coffee. I could hear my dad. I was standing next to a door that had the water heater behind inside of it. And I was about 7 or 8, and I saw my dad wrapping his bologna and cheese sandwiches
Mm.
in wax paper. That's what you wrapped it in back then. And then
Mm.
he had his thermos that fit perfectly into that little spot, and a little wire thing came over to keep it in there. And my dad would tell me how he's going to go to work, and the guys are going to be smelling the coffee, and the camaraderie is going to be good. So they used to carpool, and
Mm.
they go into Oakland, which is about 25 minutes from Pleasant Hill, where I grew up. But before Dad could leave, I would be all over it. I'd be asking him about, tell me again about the stories of when you went to school with Bill Russell, 11-time Boston Celtics world champion. How about Frank Robinson, who won the most valuable player in both for the Cincinnati Reds and the Baltimore Orioles? He used to tell me about him. Dad, tell me. And he goes, well, I ain't got much time, but I'll tell you. So my dad sort of drilled this into me a little bit about, high achievers. If you're going to be a great athlete and you want to be a good athlete. And I told him, my dad, I want to be a good baseball player. I want to play Major League Baseball for the Baltimore Orioles. Right? It's just a dream, but it's good. Your kid's got to have a dream, right?
Of course.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah. So my dad said one thing that resounded with me more than anything. He said, Danny, you're going to have to out hustle everybody. If your coach tells you to do this, you're going to have to do more, because that's what it's going to take. And years later in the business world, I came home one day from work and I always did my follow-up when I got home. And I was going through some stuff, and my wife is a great support system. She's so awesome. I get home and I said, I need a half an hour to do my personal growth stuff now that I'm home and relaxed. And I listened to half an hour of Jim Rohn, and he said it. And I thought, that's my dad. He said, always do more than what you're asked to do, so that someday you're paid more for what you do.
Yeah. Gosh.
And I get goosebumps thinking about it, because when you expand yourself beyond your current capacity, that's where the growth is. That's where the value is gained. And I'm not saying, workaholic, work, don't care about your family, don't care about anything else. That's just garbage. I think what a sad thing that is.
Yeah.
You're not going to get that back those times with your kids, right? And your wife. So, yeah. So anyway, I did it. I went on to Diablo Valley College, which is a junior college, and I wrestled for that college. And I want to tell you a story, because, people may be thinking, hey, Dan Prado's going to tell me about some of the things that he did. And, he was a champion here, champion there. I got humbled one time in such a funny, unique way. It was so embarrassing, but it was just so good for me to go through it. So one day we had a lot of great wrestlers in that room, and we had a gentleman that came in from the national team of Iran, and he was an international wrestler, and he had just moved there. So we let him in the room and let him roll around with us, and he was phenomenal. Oh, wow. He was tough. So anyway, one day I come into practice. I think it's my second year. And I was doing okay my second year. My first year I struggled because I was a little bit on the light side, 115 pounds, 116 pounds. The lightest weight class was 118 pounds. So you got to realize that I was going to be going against guys that were cutting down from 135, 130, and they're stronger still. But I was quick, fast, and I just had to try to out hustle them. But I used to get muscled around. But anyway, this is wild. He comes up to, I told him one day, I said, I think my arm's hurt. I'm over here going like, oh, my shoulder, coach, And I was making an excuse that day. I'm not going to kid you. I'll be straight up. I was making an excuse. I just wanted time off.
You wanted a break, right? You're just like, okay, how can I get out of this?
Yeah, my middle name became Wimp. I was Danny Wimp Prado. So Michael, what was wild about it was he comes up to me and goes, so what's the deal? And I said, well, it's kind of hurting right here. He goes, like right there? He's like, right there? And I said, yeah, right there. And he goes, I'll be right back. He goes to the first aid kit, comes back, and puts a Band-Aid right on my shoulder. Oh, man, I'm telling you, you think I'm small now. I felt like I was about 2 feet tall. Embarrassing. I looked him right in the eye and I said, all right, coach, I get it. And he goes, get back in there. Yeah. Isn't that something?
Wow.
The little moments that, go ahead.
No, I just love it. I did not mean to interrupt you. I love that that's such a strong memory for you, because I think, we can focus on all the pinnacles, right? All the peaks, all the wins, and you've had obviously a very successful collegiate career and now professional career. So you can look at all these mountaintop moments, and yet that's which I think speaks to your heart too, of the challenges, or in that moment, the humbling of, okay, I'm
humbling.
This is gonna make me better, right?
Man, feathers and everything, humble pie, and I was eating crow that day. My dad used to have a famous line, "Eating crow today, you're eating crow." So I went on to Chico State University, and that's what really wrestling kind of kept me in school. I have to be honest about it. And I love to compete, and I wanted to see where it'd take me, and ended up getting a Bachelor of Arts degree and phys ed and history minor. And, now that I think about it, as I reflect, I learned, I learned a lot. However, I think I've learned so much more after I got out of college, right?
Mm.
The
Mm-hmm.
real world, the real life, the things that matter the most. So let me share
Yeah.
this with you because this is very poignant. When I got to Chico State University, again, I was lightweight, but my coach wanted me. He said, "Hey, go to Chico State. You can still wrestle. Armin Brett's a great coach, and Armin is a super nice guy, still alive, California Hall of Fame wrestler, just a super guy, small guy like me."
Hmm.
And he was just so never. The nice thing I liked about him, and I don't know if you're like this or people like this, but they never get too high and they never
Mm.
get too low.
Mm-hmm.
Armin always had that even temperance. So
Mm.
after my first year, I was still light. I tried to eat. I tried to get up to 118, and I'd weigh 117, 118. I was just not heavy enough. Now get a load of this. This is a defining moment. Right after the season's over, he saw me at school. He looked me in the eye and says, "Danny, I like you. I think you're going to be a great wrestler if you want to be." He said, "But I want to tell you something. If you don't come back weighing 135 next year, you will not make this team, and this is your last year."
Wow.
When I
Mm.
heard that, Michael,
Mm.
that was a slap in the face. Like, I need to wake up. So I went
Wow.
on a journey. I committed right there. I was going to do it. So I went over to a buddy of mine named Kurt Billingsley. He was on the team, 157 pounder. And Kurt had that chest that just looked like, you get around him, you're going to bounce off, man, because he's just a stud. And I told him what the situation was. He says, "Danny, we're going to do it together for a little bit.
Hmm.
I'm gonna get you on a regimen. I'm gonna actually have you take these vitamins, eat this many meals a day. I also want you to lift heavy, 6 reps and below. You need to put on muscle and bulk." I said,
Hmm.
"Okay, when do we start?" He goes, "Today." I was like, "Right on, let's do it." So when I was up, we had a weight room upstairs, off the side of the wrestling room. Michael, I'll fast forward. I did it. I
Wow.
did it. I came back and my coach saw me signing in for classes, and he saw me outside in the line at Acker Gymnasium. And he came up to me and he says, "Dan, wow, look at you." He goes, "You listened to what I said." I said, "I did, coach. Thank you very much for letting me know." Well, that year I went
Wow.
on and made the NCAA championships. I did an All-American.
Wow.
And, not All-American was kind of very disappointing. It's kind of neat when you're down there. We were down there on the arena at California Davis Rec Hall,
Hmm.
and it's like a pit. It's like being in the Colosseum of Rome, kind of that feeling of you got all the gladiators down there warming up. And there was about 300 and something wrestlers throughout the country, and we're all drilling for the first round, second round, for the first round bouts to start. And all of a sudden, that coach, Bob Erickson, that put that Band-Aid on me,
Hmm.
he taps me on the shoulder. I didn't even know he was there. I was drilling with Adrian Levexier from San Francisco State, and we're getting warmed up. And he says, "Tap." I turn around, and he looked me right in the eye, put his hand out, and he said, "I always knew you would make it, Danny.
Hmm.
I always knew you'd make it."
Wow.
And that stayed with me forever, because when someone believes in you that much, it is amazing what
Hmm.
you can do after hearing it. It takes you to
Gosh.
places you've never been before. And that was a
Hmm.
defining moment.
Wow.
So it ends. I'm like, what now? I got 1 year to finish up my degree. Next thing you know, I take a boxing class. Like, what the heck? I had done a little boxing when I was a little kid. My dad, always had gloves, and we'd get the neighbors and we'd have some fun. And my buddies would come after school and we'd duke it out a little bit. And he's just little kids.
Hmm.
But I knew how to use my hands. Wrestling helped me quite a bit. That's an area that paid off handsomely. I was always in good shape in wrestling. I put in my miles. I prepared. And there's a lot of similarities when you look at the stances. When you look at a boxer, how he stands, right? And then you look
Hmm.
at a wrestler, how he is with his hands out here like this. And then he's like this,
Hmm.
the boxer, and he's in there. A lot of similarities. The only difference is you're reaching and trying to grab somebody's leg and take them down versus
Wow.
knocking somebody down, setting them up for a knockdown.
Hmm.
So I took this class. All my friends come. They're like, "We're coming, man. We're going to come afterwards. We're going to have beer. We're going to have a good time. We're going to have a great time." I said, "Okay, man. Okay." Well, the night, 15 minutes before the fights are going to start, there's probably 500 people there watching. That's how you got your credit. You get 1 unit. That's how you got your credit for the class. And it was a fundraiser for the school. So anyway, I get out there and my guy doesn't show up, and I'm not happy. I'm like, my buddies came out here. They're going to be I'm like, well, man, Danny, we drove 3 hours. And I'm like, my friends were great. So I went up to George Medeiros, the boxing guy, coach for our class. And I said, George, my guy forfeited. Is there anybody else that forfeited? It didn't show up. He goes, oh, yeah, 145 pounder. Diego Pacheco, he's, you fought him before. You know how tough he is. And Diego would get the best of me in our practices, but just by a little. Now, he weighed 22 pounds, maybe more than me. But my hand speed was good, and he had more power. But, I held my ground, you might say, Michael. So I held my ground. Yeah. Well, I said, I want to fight him. He goes, you sure? I go, I want to fight him. Well, that night I beat him pretty decisively. And he was a nice guy. We gave each other a hug at the end of it. And when I got my hand raised, I came right back to the corner, and they were taking my gloves off. 2 gentlemen stuck their head inside the ring. Rick Payne and Stan Parrish were 2 real estate gurus in the area of Chico. And they were the boxing coaches, and they had a pretty good team. And they put their heads in, and Rick Payne looks at me and says, hey, Prado, how'd you like to fight for the college team? I said, well, thank you anyway, coach, but I'm finishing up on my degree, and I'm going to get on with coaching wrestling and possibly teaching, and that's what I want to do. And he looked me right in the eye. He says, how'd you like to be a national champion? And I said, when do we start?
That's all it took.
That's all it took. Now, when you say that, you have to know that you just decided you're going to commit to it. And that was the best part. I committed at that point. I committed to that sport.
Yeah.
And it was a short span, only 4 months later. I think 5 months later, I was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The heavyweight champion of the world at the time was Larry Holmes, the Easton assassin, one of the quickest jabs of any heavyweight in the boxing world. Larry Merchant, who still does a little bit of HBO, and Barry Tompkins was a local sportscaster out of the Bay Area. And matter of fact, what's kind of funny, 10 seconds before the fight, I look over at Barry Tompkins and I says, I miss seeing you in the Bay Area, Barry. This is 10 seconds before my fight. And my coach kind of looks at me like, what are you doing? I said, he goes, you feeling all right? I go, I feel great. And, I went on to, I wasn't even seated. And the first night, they just booed me. Because we're in Pennsylvania, Westchester State, Pennsylvania, just outside of Philly. And here I am, there were 5 or 6 of us from the Pacific Northwest, Nevada, Reno, Northern California. We're trying to fight. These guys back east, they're tough. They're tough.
Yeah.
They're disciplined. And so that night, I fought a guy named Tim Freimeyer from Lock Haven State, and I beat him. But boy, I'll tell you, the first 10 seconds, he hit me so hard. Oh, Michael, he hit me so hard. I saw my vision went black.
Wow.
And good thing I had a wrestling background, because I overhooked him and underhooked him and just held on to him. And I gathered my mind and went on to beat him pretty unanimously. And then the next night, I'm up on Hollinger Fieldhouse, and now the crowd's coming. Now we're talking 5 or 6 or 7,000 people. They're filling in the stands. Now you see all the lights off to the side on the top deck where the indoor track is. I could just picture this, man. It just gives me goosebumps thinking about it. It's so awesome. And so I see Larry Holmes in there with Larry Merchant, and they're interviewing all the favorites. And I believe they were interviewing Bobby Navarro, my finalist opponent. And I was just running around, warming up. I just felt really good, Michael. I was just on my game. And I said, this is fantastic. They don't even know who I am. I love this. No pressure, baby.
Wow.
Just go, let it go. And I did. Gave him a standing 8 count that night. The next day, I get my hand raised. All kinds of stuff starts coming, awards and everything. It's just so awesome. And And Bobby was a great guy. He walked right over to me, had an Air Force Academy hat on it, Falcon, said Falcons on it, and he handed it to me, and he goes, congratulations, Dan. I said, Bobby, you're first class. And we gave each other a big hug. And then, between all these pictures everybody's taken, well, little did I know the next day was awesome. That picture was in Associated Press picture, and it's called The Double Whammy. And it was Bobby Navarro and I I think the photographer wanted to get pictures early so he could get out of there. So he did the first fight, and then he jumped ship, right? So,
Mhm.
some of those guys were like, I got a long ride back to, to home.
Right.
So, who knows? I could be wrong, but
Yeah.
it was so cool. It was all over the world, this picture. And I've
Wow.
got it to this day. And I keep that. The next time I'm with you, I'll show you something. I
Yeah.
made a copy of it, and I've got the other one put away, but I I keep it in my folder, and here's why. The fight is never over until it's over. And that's
Mm.
my daily reminder that
Mm.
I still have work to do. I still can get better. I can still make progress. So you see, really what
Wow.
athletics did for me was set a tempo, set a rhythm, a flow, and it allowed me to get up and go. It just did.
Wow.
And it was
This
amazing. So yeah,
so
it
good,
was
Dan.
it was so good. But on my gloves, I don't have them in here. I have them hanging in another room. Now I got Larry Holmes' autograph,
Mm.
but you'll love this one. I get back and I got my gloves. I'm sitting in the stands, and these two boys are sitting next to me. And right behind me are their parents, Mr. and Mrs. Pagano. And they said, do you mind if my son gets your autograph? He's been wanting to get your autograph. He said, you had a great fight. You're a champion. He wants to get your autograph. And I said, well, yeah, I'd be happy to. And I go, what are your names, guys? They go, Matthew and Mike Pagano. They were like about 6 and 7, 8 years old. So I said, okay, uh, you can give me I'll give you my autograph, but I want you to sign my gloves. And oh my goodness, the dad goes, no way. And the mother goes, wait a minute, you just got those signed by the heavyweight champion of the world. You're a national champion. Don't,
Mm.
my son, you know how big they write? My name is Matthew
Mm.
Pagano. And you got them big M up there with a big A. And
Yeah.
you know exactly what I'm talking about
Mm.
because
Oh, yeah.
our kids were that age. That's what you got. And I looked over at the parents and they go, are you sure? And I said, it's pretty cool getting Larry Holmes' autograph. However, sign my gloves, but I'll never, ever, ever forget the look on the boys' faces right now when they're signing my gloves.
Mm.
And believe it or not, that was more important to me than getting
Wow.
Larry Holmes' autograph.
Gosh.
It was kind of fun. Yeah. And then I went on and got into the, taught school a little bit, coached high school wrestling. And I did, I was head coach for 6 years, 1 in Northern California and then 2 in Cincinnati, Ohio. And then I was an assistant coach when I came back in 1995 from Michigan. We were married and, starting a family. And in 1988, I ended up joining, a machine tool company and got in the machine tool. And I started selling capital equipment. So that's what I do. I sell a lot of capital equipment, CNC, high-tech machinery. And then also I do a lot of what they call fancy words, strategic part sourcing. It's really finding machining work for shops, and I'm a 10% broker there. And then I've been doing motivational speaking for such a long time now, since 2008-ish. My daughter's the one that put the spark in me. And
Mm.
I literally had a dream one Saturday. It must have been through the Friday night or Saturday because I was standing in front of the entire auditorium and I was giving a talk. And I said, man, this is great. They're all going wild. They're going crazy. Like, I'm like, whoa, this is weird. I wake up, I come into the kitchen and my daughter's standing in there and she goes, Dad, I was thinking of something. Good morning, Dad. I was thinking of something. I was thinking you should get into motivational speaking. And I just went,
Wow.
are you kidding me? Alice, you wouldn't believe just what happened to me. 4 days later, a customer, I'm taking him to go look at some equipment in Fremont. And all of a sudden, I'm like, this guy's loving it. He's loved what we're talking about. What books are you reading? Tell me how you're growing. Danny, I started a new company. I need to buy some equipment. Talk to Mikey. Mikey's up front in the front seat. I'm going to be on my computer in the back. And I'm going to be busy. So don't feel like I'm disrespectful, but I just got to get after it. And I said, no problem. He goes, we're looking at 3 pieces of equipment. I said, okay, great. So we had about an hour and a 45-minute drive. So all of a sudden, Mikey, who talks like Joe Pesci, is it funny? The Portuguese guy, and he's a little smaller than me, and he goes, hey, Danny, I want to know, hey, what are you reading right now? Come on, get right to it. And I started laughing. I go, Mikey, I'm reading this book called The Little Red Book of Sales by Jeffrey Gitomer. He goes, okay, get to it. Just tell me what it is. I said, okay. Personal philosophy drives attitude. Attitude drives actions. Actions drives results, and results gives you your lifestyle. And all of a sudden, I look in the rearview mirror, and the computer goes down. And Rick
Mm,
Jennings, who is still a wonderful friend to this day. And matter of fact, I've stayed at his house because he loves to learn more about personal growth every time I come into California for business. So I stay with him once in a while.
mm.
And he said, "What do you eat and what do you drink? Because I want some of it." I said, "Well, I love it." I go, you're my purpose." He goes, "I don't understand." I said, "You're my passion. You're the reason I exist because I love to help people win. And my goal today is to help you win. Not only get the
Mm,
equipment, but know that I'm taking good care of you, that I'm treating you fairly." And he goes, "Okay, I've never said this before to anyone, and I probably never will. I'm buying from you today." And I was like, "Whoa, that is awesome." He goes, "If you got the right equipment at the right price, take good care of me." I came home. We were driving back. I think I made a $6,000 commission that day. We delivered his equipment in the next 2 weeks. And, but the most important part was when we got back, he said, "I need to talk with you." He goes, "We got 25 people here. Give me about 2 weeks. A lot of them will come from a company that they just beat up
mm,
mentally, emotionally, and their spirits aren't high." And this is right up
mm.
your alley, right? Engagement, right? Look what
Right.
happens. Look at some of the teams that you have to deal with, right? But
Right.
I'll finish
Yeah.
up with me here. So that's really what it was is we got back and he said, "Hey, how'd you like to do a team building talk for us? Motivational talk." Like I didn't
Mm.
even know how much to charge. I didn't know, I just go to Google when I get home. I go, I don't know,
Right.
And
Yeah. What is
yeah,
this
yeah,
supposed to look
yeah,
like? Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I believe I'll do a good job. I just don't know how much I'm supposed to
Right.
charge.
Right. Yeah.
That insecure feeling. But it all worked out, and that was my very first talk. And then I went up to Sonora that like 2 days later, and a guy that always wanted me to do motivational speakings. I came up to him. I said, "Hey, Bonnie, I did." Bonifacio is his name. Galvin fly reels. They manufacture freshwater, saltwater fly reels. He says, he goes, I said, "Hey, I did my first motivational talk in Turlock for a company called Mid Valley Seals." And he said, "When you doing one for us?" He goes, "Can you do it Saturday? We're going to Minneapolis for a show." And this just started happening. So you see what happens?
Yeah.
Success is what you attract by the person you
Mm,
become. Jim Rohn.
yeah.
Success is
Gosh.
what you attract by the person you become. If you create value, you add something to the menu, uh, people are going to eat a delicious meal and be very happy about
Mm,
it.
mm. Man, gosh, there's so
So
much
that was
there,
it.
Dan. I love, obviously hearing your story, but a couple of things jumped out at me that I want to make sure that I kind of hit home for our listeners because this is what impacted me the most. Obviously you had some incredible mentors along the way, right? People who
Yes.
saw something deeper, starting with your dad and then obviously your
Yeah.
coaches and you saw, you had people in your life who saw something deeper in you than you even saw in yourself. And they didn't do that, or communicate that with you it wasn't all sunshine and buttercups, like there was some
Oh,
hard things and hard truths that
oh,
they needed to tell you. It was
oh,
sticking the Band-Aid on you and saying, hey, it's time for you to jump to another level here, right? Or you need to get over this hurdle, and
yep.
telling you the truth, really, of what you needed to
Oh,
do. Hey, you need to, be up 135 pounds. Hey, you need to, train this hard. You need to do more than what's
yes.
expected of you in every area of your life
That's right.
for you to actually up level, right?
Boy, what a great point. That's just so important that you brought that up because right after I finished fighting in college, I decided to fight Golden Gloves. And so I extended it for a while. And I never forget this. The guy that was training the people at the Little C Athletic Club, which it was called, and they had some great amateur fighters there, and they had some good pros training there. And I knew some of the professionals. They're good people. And we had a guy named Terry Lee Edison. He was a professional fighter, did really well on the circuit. And he said, I come walking in and he said, "Hey," he goes, "I heard you're going to be coming in here. You want to fight for our team." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "So you're the national champion for Chico State?" And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Let me see your left hook." So I said, "Okay." And I showed it to him. He says, "That's absolutely horrible." Must have been a different time. It must have been a different time in our lives, because I'm
Yeah.
23 at the time, 22, 23. And he says, "It's terrible." He says, "But you can fix it." Now I had a choice
Hmm.
to make. You know, I had a choice to make. I could have said, "What does this old guy know? He's an old timer.
Mm,
He's way past his prime." And then I thought, nope,
yeah.
Danny, be quiet, be patient, learn, from the best. And
Mm-hmm.
he taught me a ton: how to cut off the ring, how to swivel out of the corner, how to put combinations together. And I'll never forget one time. He's just tough. It was tough love back then. Tough love. He
Mm-hmm.
just told me,
Mm-hmm.
I said, hey, I want more sparring time. He says, you don't deserve it. I felt like it was like Mick and Rocky in the Mick movie. Get out of here. What do you think? I run a soup kitchen here? Get out of
Right.
here. You
Right.
know? And I'm like, no, I want more time and I want it. And he goes, you don't deserve it until you start showing me you've earned it. So I go, what do I got to do? Just what do I have to do? And he goes, you got to put in more miles and you got to be in here. You come over here after coaching wrestling and you spend 2 hours. You need to be in here 3.5, 4 hours. So I did it. And I went on
Wow.
to win a Northern California Golden Glove Championship. And the gentleman that I
Mm.
fought went on and turned professional. And I think he won like 6 fights. He was before he finished up,
Wow.
you know. But I didn't want to turn pro. And I did have a couple people that one was an owner of a bar, which, you know, anytime you hear, you know, it's not like they have the bars today, like sports bars. These are the ones where guys are in there smoking, you know, shooting shots down.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I don't want to sponsor you, Dan. And I'm like, oh boy, I don't even know if he's even coherent, right? But this
Right.
one guy was really good. He owned the place and he kept his cool. He never got toasted, but he really wanted to have me wanted to sponsor me, but I didn't. I didn't want to get my head beat in. I just, you know, the lightweights at that time weren't making money. And I wanted to get on with the rest of my life and career. And so
Mm-hmm.
it was a good experience, great experience.
Yeah.
And it's paved the way for a lot of mental toughness for the rest of my life. And I'm still learning and growing, man. It's just so much to learn. That's kind
Mm-hmm.
of fun. That's why I like meeting you. You know, I love it when people are growing and they're sharing it with me. That's so awesome. You know, now let me ask
Mm-hmm.
you. Now, I know you're doing the interview, but man, I really want people that know me and know you to hear a little bit more in depth of what your journey was, because I think what you
Yeah.
do is amazing. Like I think you're like this. You know me. I get the fire going in people. I get the energy. I got the enthusiasm, the optimism, the energy, right? And you come in, and I find you to be such a professional neurosurgeon who has really dissected all the certain parts of a company and people and characteristics of those people and being able to blend them together and come together for one common cause:
Mm.
growth
Yeah.
and respect for one another
Mm.
as you become
Yeah.
profitable in your business. So
Yeah.
could you share some of that? That would be awesome.
Well, gosh, yeah, no, thank you. And before I dive in, I do want to mention something because I don't want to forget this because I think, you know, through the common thread that our listeners have heard and what, you know, there's so much that I can pull away from, again, your story and your journey was that you made a decision. There's lots of decision points, right? You made a commitment, you made a
Yep.
decision,
Yeah.
you knew what the prize was, you know, what the motivation was for it.
Mm-hmm.
You had accountability in place, right?
Mm-hmm.
You weren't just
Mm-hmm.
going solo and just, oh, I'll just try to figure it out.
Yeah.
You and I think one of the biggest pieces that you touched on is you had to make a decision of, am I going to come under the authority of this person, of this expert, of this person who can actually help me get to the next place? And that's not always the case. That's not always common in this day and age.
Right.
Is like, oh, you know, I'll do it myself, or I'll, you know, go, you know, online and figure it out, whatever it might be. And
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's just so important. You know, that's why I, you know, I receive coaching. That's why I have mentors in my life. That's why I have people that I'm, you know, growing with, because I think that's so important. And so it's so neat
Oh.
to hear in your story how many times you did that and repeated that pattern. And not only are you obviously continuing to do that, you know, with the work you get to do today, but now you get to motivate these teams, right? You get to motivate other people and their organizations and help them have a higher vision.
Yeah.
So I just love that. I had to make it, you know, take a second, you
Oh,
know, to say
thank
that
you,
as
thank
well.
you. Yeah, yeah. There's those moments of life is a pattern, right? That's really what
Yeah,
it is. You
yeah,
set that biggest word right in the English dictionary is awesome. Decide.
hmm
Once
yeah,
you're in.
yeah. It's so good. Well,
Ooh,
and I appreciate you.
painful.
You, yeah. What's that?
I was gonna say painful at times, but Oh,
Painful,
so
yeah.
worth it.
Well, isn't that true? That's actually kind of a good segue into a bit of my story. I grew up in the
Yeah,
Portland
yeah.
area. Went to school in Eugene. My oldest son was born the same day that I graduated from college. I met my wife there
Wow.
in Eugene, Oregon, and very quickly we decided, which was kind of fun because we're kind of stressing a little bit. When you have a
Yeah.
baby coming, you're like, when is family going to come? So it kind of worked out well for him to be born, and then that
Cool.
morning and celebrate that, and then she's just kind of like, hey everybody, go to the graduation ceremony, go ahead and give us a little break. And so family was there anyway, so that was
How
just
cool. How
a
cool.
neat moment. And then but also when you have responsibility on you, right? Being, gosh, I 22 at the time, and
Oh,
having our
yeah.
firstborn and graduating from
Wow.
school, there's that pressure that is, kind of on you of, well, how is this going to look? And
Man,
I
wow. I can't
graduated with
imagine.
a,
Whew.
yeah, it's just a lot, right? And so I kind of took the natural path of just kind of what everybody did. I took a business manager, or I completed a degree in business management,
Awesome.
and
Awesome.
I wanted to lead other people, but Dan, I had no idea how to lead anybody. Right. I'm now, at the time I thought I did, right. I had all the book smarts. I had all the,
Yeah.
I had the
Yes.
degree to prove it.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
But there's a whole different piece of, having experience, and honestly, if I'm, being real honest with you, leading in a way that engages both the head and the heart. And
Oh,
I was
oh,
so
oh,
focused on the
oh, that's
head
good.
and the numbers and driving, because, I could connect with people, but my focus was, well, what could I get out of them? Not what could I help them become, right? What
Wow,
can I help them grow
man,
into?
that says a lot
Right.
about you right there. Humility to
Well,
know that you can.
I've made every single mistake I think you can
Yeah,
make
same here.
as a
Same here.
leader. I had
Oh,
a big crisis
yeah,
moment,
yeah, yeah.
in honestly, in my marriage and in my career. Fast forwarding a bit, I got great opportunities to work and lead at Starbucks for a number of years. Then I moved into being a vice president over branches for one of the largest credit unions in the nation. And so I learned over time, obviously, what didn't work, which is a great teacher. So when you mention pain and failure, I think in the
Yeah.
moment it's so easy for us to get defeated, or if perfectionism is a part of any part of you, it's really hard to say, gosh, it stinks to fail. But gosh, what a great teacher. And
Oh,
I can think back to the
oh,
specific mentors
awesome.
in my life who cared enough to tell me the truth,
Yeah.
about what I was doing and what I needed to do to grow, and were able to push me. Those are the people that you remember, right? I don't remember the
Wow.
people who just told me whatever I wanted to hear, or who were just
Yeah.
flattering me nonstop, right?
Yeah. Right.
I remember the people who lovingly, because they cared about me,
Excuse me.
cared to tell me the truth because they wanted me to grow. And so
Yeah.
that really stuck with me.
Perfect.
Yeah, and so I got to build teams all across the Northwest. Mostly in Idaho, and just being able to grow those teams, I started seeing patterns. I started seeing, wait a
Ah,
second,
yeah.
if I do it this way, number one, leading with that head and heart, there's specific ways that I can motivate teams. And there's specific ways that I can motivate leaders to help maximize the work that they do, because I truly believe that everybody does want to find purpose in what they do every day. They want to do, by and large, a
Yes.
lot of people want to do a really good job. They just don't either know how to do
Oh,
it, or maybe
oh.
don't have the proper motivation, or, there's just some missing pieces there. So
Yes.
how do you help
Yes.
bring out the best in them? And so I've created
Wow.
frameworks, and we've gotten to talk a little bit about that. But my big piece is helping focus on the cultures of those businesses and those leaders,
Nice.
really investing in that development time, and then creating a space so that those leaders specifically know, well, what is the scorecard that can bring in not only the measurable of, hey, you want to make money, you want to make profit, but how
Sure.
can we have a really highly engaged workforce,
Yes.
and how can we have a really highly engaged team that we
Yes.
can measure and track and show how much that's going to make a difference,
Yeah.
not only in our bottom line, but in just what we experience every day, because I believe everybody
Wow.
deserves to have an amazing place that they get to work and they get to lead in. And it's just a
Yeah.
pleasure. It's so fun to do
Yeah.
that and work with, different clients all across the country. And so, that's a bit of the work I get to do and a bit of my story. And so
That's
I really
awesome.
appreciate you asking. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You're welcome. A couple things stand out from that. You mentioned about creating a space and environment. I don't think there's a person in the world today that gets up in the morning, grabs her keys, gets in the car, backs out, starts to drive down the street and says, I can't wait to have a horrible day at work. Right?
Yep.
Now, unfortunately, some of the environments that people go to work in. But you notice something when I said that? These people still have hope. They feel like the next day it might possibly get better.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's what I say. Create that better on your own. Create it on your own.
Yeah.
Pain plus reflection equals progress. And
Yeah.
that comes from Ray Dalio, the financial economist.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Well, and
so,
you
right, there you
touched
go.
on something. Yeah, you touched on something too just a minute ago, and this is part of my story. Is as leaders, we're not perfect.
No.
So the folks listening to this podcast are busy, successful executives who are leading their own companies. They're leading their teams. They're making a difference, right? They're already growing. But I think sometimes the thing that holds us back is, well, it's kind of always been this way for me.
Yeah.
Or I've kind of always experienced this, or maybe it's something, like, gosh, I've struggled with, conflict or breaking through that next barrier, like you were kind of talking about in your
Yeah.
story. I think sometimes it's just admitting, hey, number one, there's, an issue, but then apologizing for it if needed. Right?
Yes.
Hey guys, I feel like I've been missing the mark here. I want to do something different. Are you willing to try something new with me? I think that
Oh,
piece gets
beautiful.
missed a lot.
Yeah, it
And I'll
does.
tell you what, I've made a lot of mistakes, but what's cool is when you have that desire for growth, like you mentioned,
Yes.
now it becomes a learning. Now it's not a pass fail. It's, hey, I'm learning. I'm on a journey. I'm messing up
Oh, for
too,
sure. Oh, for
but
sure.
how can we do this together? Right. And
Yeah.
I
Oh, you
just,
said the
just
key word, together.
yeah,
Oh, together. Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead. I didn't mean to
yeah.
interrupt you. That's great. How do you do
No,
it
yeah,
together?
and
Ooh.
and so anyway, but Dan, the work that you do is so powerful, and so I want to jump back to you for a moment. So
Okay.
again,
Yeah,
thank you
sure,
for
sure,
asking, but
sure. I love
um,
it.
I the motivation to, number one, excel in the work that you do every day, right? To excel in every area. There are people, leaders who are listening, and I think just in general, it's been a challenging few years, for most folks with everything going on in the world, and then
Right.
just economically, and then kind of looking ahead, and some folks are like, "Gosh, there's some big storm clouds, and how are we gonna get through this?" Can you help our listeners know just a little smidge, and I know you've touched on it
Sure,
some, of
sure.
the motivation that drives you every day, the excellence that drives you, and then what you get to share in part with those leaders, with those teams when you come in and you're able to share your heart with them?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. A few things come to mind. When I hear people worrying about the economy and the president and the taxes and you name them, there's a litany of them. If you allow that stuff to just get into your psyche, it will bury you.
Mm,
It'll bury you.
yeah.
Avoid it. Avoid it. None of that stuff's going to create optimism. None of that stuff's going to create opportunity. None of that. So what you have to do, and I want to share this with the audience. Gosh, it must have been sometime around 2010 or so, 2009. I was driving between Lodi, California and Sacramento, California, and I was really hitting hard so much. Books, growth, audios. And I was actually getting overwhelmed.
Mm,
And then, like a light bulb went off, I go, I got it. Simplify it, Danny. And I came up with an acronym called CPPA. And what I liked about coming up with this acronym is it took me a lot of thought, deep thinking.
mm,
Henry Ford says thinking's very hard to do. That's why very few people engage in it. Right?
mm,
So let's think. If you got to think. So I'm going along and I go, I got it. CPPA, create. That's what we're doing every day. You better be doing it.
mm,
Create, plan, prepare, and achieve.
Mm.
Create, plan,
Yeah.
prepare, and achieve. And if you're a leader of a company and you're not willing to put your pride aside, because here's the real issue. John C. Maxwell says, humility is always concerned with what's right. Pride's concerned with who's right. I'm right.
Mm.
I'm right. And we get a
Yeah.
lot of that
Wow.
finger pointing and blame game and that kind of stuff. And it's just
Mhm.
unhealthy in an organization. So,
Yeah.
this is, I had something happen to me in 2000 and I'd say 10-ish when I was a sales manager with a company, and it changed around they changed the comp plans and everything.
Mm.
And it wasn't the most exciting comp plan. However, it was interesting. That moment it changed. I remember looking at my computer. I put my hands over my ears. I looked right down and I said, no one's responsible except for you. Go out and
Mm.
create some amazing things, Danny. You know what you're dealing with. Be responsible, be accountable, go make it happen. So what I did is I just created my own success. I decided to
Mm.
let everybody else worry about the economy, worry about taxes, worry about this, worry about that, weather. Oh my gosh, the world's falling apart. Oh my gosh, right? So
Mhm.
for me, it's, is being committed to creating your own path, right? And this is why
Yeah.
I came up with this 5P plan. I really like this. Is this, purpose, passion, preparation, persistence, and performance. And boy, it's
Mm.
sequential when you think about it. It
Mm.
just flows.
Yeah.
You know, Brian Tracy, I see some of the books you have. Is that a book on leadership, Brian Tracy, up there? I don't know.
Yeah,
It
I've
looks
got a few
pretty good.
different
Yeah,
books up
yeah,
there.
yeah. I got that same
John
book.
Gordon is two of
Yeah,
them.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. So, one of the things I like Brian Tracy a lot too is I look at you got to be purposeful in life. You got to have a purpose. And I mean, you got to have one. You need it as
Mm.
much as human beings need food, water, and air. You got to have it because that
Yeah.
purpose will drive your passion. And if you're passionate, oh my goodness, you'll prepare like no other. Back to the
Mm.
sports. You have to prepare. You got to run. You got to do the workout. You got to do the exercise. It's painful. It hurts. You got to do it. You got to do it. You got to do it, and
Mhm.
just commit to doing it. And don't do the blame game. And when you're able to do that, here's what happens. If you're so purposeful, passionate, and prepared, when an obstacle comes up, you're gonna go right through it because
Mm.
you got so much momentum. Big Mo showed up, and you've got so much momentum. It's going through. And then
Yeah.
you get to perform at your highest level. So
Yeah.
my tip to so I like what you get into really the nuts and bolts of a lot of things, and this is what intrigues me the most about you. Other than just being a genuine guy and just being nice to talk with and get to know, is that I read your stuff. That's a lot of information, and it's well thought out, and it's been years and years of, of dissecting that so that it can be attractive and be the right information for the right companies, right? Because companies are all different, So
Right.
let me ask you this, Michael. When you go into, when somebody calls you, how does it usually work? You call somebody, they call you, they see you on your website, they see you on Instagram, or somebody says you got to get a hold of Michael Wolsten. He's going to help your company. Is that
Mhm.
typically how do you get your clients and the
Yeah,
companies you get to
you're
work with?
flipping this podcast around on me here.
That's
No,
okay. I hope you don't mind.
I appreciate the question. Yeah, no, yeah, it's interesting, because I think just like any of us, it is based off of a need, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
the businesses that I work with, obviously, like you said, I'm not a perfect fit for everyone. But they already have a measure of success. They already have a measure of high performance and wanting to go somewhere. But there's one piece that's off, right? There's some
ooh,
conflict maybe that's going on
yeah,
within the organization, or gosh, we feel like we're not quite getting there when it comes to, our sales and service, or gosh,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
really hard to get any momentum or any excitement around what we're doing. So our engagement, people are here, but our engagement is just not where it should be. Or
yeah,
man, we have some plans, some ideas, but we just are struggling with how to set up the framework for development. And one of my clients is one of the top agents for their company in the entire state, and is just incredible. And he was like, "Hey, Michael, I want you to come in to help us be more effective so that this becomes a pattern. It's not just like a one and done,
Oh, so good.
so that's what the best do." And it kind of reminds me of what you mentioned when you took that first punch, or that first punch got you, where you kind of like, it shook you back, and your
Ooh,
training is what
yeah,
kicked in at the
yeah,
right moment, right?
yeah,
It was the wrestling that kicked in, because it would have been easy to say, I just got knocked out, right? I just got
yeah,
hit
yeah,
hard,
yeah.
fall down. But
Wow.
if you hadn't put in all those hours of training and falling into what your normal habit, your behavior is, then you were able to continue not only the fight, but go on and win. And I think that is such a critical piece for businesses and for us as leaders anyway, and all the areas that we lead is, you're pouring into your investment in yourself and in these companies, and how to think right, and how to, stay motivated, and how to be
Right.
purposeful in the work you're doing. Well, that's not just a shot in the arm thing. That's not just a, hey, I went to this conference once, or
No,
hey, I watched this TED talk. And don't get me wrong, those things are good, but
they
you
are.
you have to have a system, right? You have to have a way of being where this is what I eat, sleep, and drink and breathe. I mean, that, like, this is
Oh,
this is who I
Michael,
am, and that's
spot
that's who
on.
you are, and it just comes out of you.
Wow.
And obviously that was reflected in that client that you share. When the
Oh
guy's in the
man.
back and doing the
Yeah,
laptop
yeah,
thing, he puts down the laptop
yeah,
and is like, "Wait a second, tell
yeah.
tell me more." That's the kind of
Exactly.
work that I think we get to do, which is so impactful, because I believe that leaders want to be effective. They want their teams
Yeah,
to grow. They want to
yeah,
change the
yeah,
world. They want to make an
yeah,
impact.
yeah,
And sometimes there's just some barriers that get in the way of that, right?
yeah. I think a lot of leaders, and I think you run into this too, is a lot of leaders are thinking, man, when I invest in the people on my team, man, I hope they don't take off. I've invested so much in
Mm,
training, and it's the reality of it, right? And
yeah.
last night I was thinking about a couple of things, and I like what you know people that like the leaders that want to get better. That's amazing. They still want to get better. Like they're high level
Mm,
achievers, and they still want to
right.
get better. James Clear talks in his book Atomic Habits. Throw away the
Hmm.
goal. Now he doesn't really mean throw away the goal. What he's saying is the goal is good, but boy, you better set, because the motivation will get you going, but it's the habits that keep you going. So you better get
Right.
yourself systems and processes in place, and I think that's what you do very well. And I think that's what
Yeah.
you probably help a lot of companies do. But the big thing is that people think, what if we train them and they leave us? And the other side is, what if you don't and they stay? And there we
Yeah.
go back to the engagement, right? Dr. Darren Martin's book, Company of Owners, right? Engagement. You and I talked about this before. Isn't that crazy?
Hmm.
2015, a Gallup poll was
Yeah.
done on people that go to work and what percentage are engaged when they go to work? 29%. And they compared it to
Hmm.
sitting on a stool with one leg, right? Playing a guitar with two strings and driving a six
Yep.
cylinder engine on two. Not sustainable. Not sustainable. When you look at manufacturing companies and what they do to make a product that is long lasting and always evolving. Now there are legacy products that stay in a manufacturing company for, it seems like, forever, but
Mm,
it's an evolutionary thing. You've got to continue the growth. And this is why they
right.
have all these certifications, like for the medical industry and the aerospace industry, semiconductor, just so much going on, government, ITAR, and, ISO certification, all these things. And what they're saying is document what you say you're going to do, and then you better do it, right?
Yeah.
Document what you're going to do, and then you better do it. But the
Mm,
leaders that I love are the ones that say, hey, everybody in this room, and I mean everybody, myself, and I'm number one on the list, I can still get better. So we're going to continue our
mm,
educational growth plan here at this company. We're going to have seminars done. We're going to do quite a few things. I'll tell you the biggest thing in companies, and I see hardly anybody do it. It blows my mind. It just blows my mind. I go to these companies and I don't see one library
mm,
inside the organization.
yeah.
What a tragedy.
It's so
Now,
true.
maybe
Yeah.
ownership says, well, maybe it's on them. They got to go home and do it. And it is. If somebody wants to grow, they'll grow. If somebody wants to win, they'll find a way to win. If somebody wants to compete, they're going to find a way to compete. They're going to do it.
Mm.
So I was doing a talk for Santa Pac Corporation, who does a lot of on-site waste uh, products. They make these amazing machines and autoclaves. And so I got to know them because we were a company I was representing, and we were doing their hubs and spindles for the autoclaves. And it was good orders. I mean, we were making, they gave us a lot of POs and some good large ones. And so great company. And that's where I met a gentleman named Roman Flores. And Roman was a personal growth student of mine from like 2009. I'd come in and hand him these sheets from Jim Rohn and Brian Tracy and Zig Ziglar and all these things. And he goes, I love this stuff. He goes, you come in here, you don't even try to sell me anything. You just want to help me grow. I said, what do you love to do, Roman? He goes, I love financing. He goes, I'm a purchasing agent, but I love financing. I said, do you do some of that on the side? He goes, yeah, I do my own personal for people. I run their financial plans. He goes, my goal is eventually to get into helping this company do their 401ks and all that. And I said, hey, that's great, man. I go, just do it. You can do it. Well, fast forward, he ended up eventually becoming general manager, vice president, and now he's the president of the company.
Wow.
And they have two of the most remarkable guys. I hope you get to meet them someday.
Yeah.
Roman Flores and Arthur McCoy. And Arthur is humble. Arthur really wanted the presidency, and everybody voted in Roman. Now, that's a really touchy situation, especially when they were so close and Arthur was above him. Arthur told me when I did one of the talks for their companies, he says, Roman and I see eye to eye on the importance and the growth of this company. Now, this is it's very important. I share this story with you because you run into it. Mm-hmm. How often do you find a president and a vice president that click on all cylinders and actually respect each other so much that they're willing to give credit to them and not themselves, right? Back to great growth. Be willing to give credit to others where you need none for yourself, and to give without expecting any in return. They're one of the most amazing companies. So on one of the talks, I brought a book and I said, this is my gift to you. I want this organization to start a library. The next time I came out, that library was started. They had a library. And if you go to their place now in Tracy, you open the door, you go inside that lobby. To the right, they have audios and books. And everybody just grabs from them and reads. They autographed a book from Simon Sinek. It's called The Infinite Game, right? And I think I talked to you about that book. Mm-hmm. And they, I tell you, they get it. They judge their success as a company by the growth of their people and not by the dollars. And you want to know something? Here's what's happened. By doing so, they have never been more profitable than ever before. Because when you have an environment where people are upbeat, happy being there, know they're making an impact, leaving a huge impression, and this is what you deal with. It's awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's crazy because, well, and I know we've talked a bit about this, but the principle is, you're focusing on the root and nourishing it, right? So that you can get the fruit. And I think it's so common for us, just as humans, right, to chase the fruit, to chase the dollars. And I love numbers and I love growth. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, no. I enjoy making money. I think we should.
Yeah.
But it's part of what you do.
Yeah, it's sustainable for only so long. And so I love that you encourage the learning and the personal growth and this library. And I'm the same way, I believe great leaders read and they digest information, but it's also, and I see this too, where sometimes people are hearing a lot of voices, but it comes back to that, the acronyms that you shared earlier. It's the practical application. It's how you take what motivates you and turn it into something that you can really own and you have a vision for with your company or with your leadership team or just as an individual. Mm-hmm. And then, the big piece too at the end is continuing to build on celebration and success, right? How can you repeat that over and over again? And so I love, you hearing that story and having you share that. Because it's so true. I think, as you start that cycle and you overcome some of the issues that can be in place for anybody, then you get to build on the good stuff. And you get to say, okay, well, that I'm going to steal that idea, or I really love that idea. And I don't know if you've experienced this too, but I've felt that pressure sometimes as a leader of, well, I've got to come up with all the things and I have to, think up of all the clever stuff. And it's like, there's so many amazing examples for us currently and in the past that have lit this path to show us not only
Yes.
how to increase our own engagement, but how to, continue to kind of keep that fire going. Which
Yeah,
yeah, I just think
yeah,
is so
yeah. And
important.
keeping the confidence level up in your people and the teams.
Yeah.
When I would go, I was a sales manager for a CNC machine shop, and they since sold the business, but really nice people, very nice people. It was a wonderful place to work. You had your trials and tribulations, but we worked through it. We were tough. We were mature people. That's what I like. You get through the tough times when you're mature, when you approach something
Mm.
maturely. But one of the things was uh, and that was the place, by the way, I was telling you when the comp plan changed, and you just get focused, and and it took off from there. I started doing really well, and had some great years, and so it just turned out actually best for everybody. And but I remember going into the shop, and I felt people said, "Hey, you're the sales manager, right? You're responsible for bringing in work." And I said, "Well, that's part of what I do. My job is to encourage and empower every team member in this room, on this team, to enjoy what they're doing, to get after it, to take pride in mastering their craft." Now, that's a key word.
Mm.
Boy, if you master
Mm.
your craft, how valuable are you?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. If you
Yeah.
master your craft, people are like, I want that guy or that girl on my team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So I would walk
Yeah.
into 6:45 in the morning, 6:30. They'd come in at 7. And I'd come up and walk to almost every individual. I didn't get to do it all the time, but I'd say, "Hey, how's the best team in the business doing today in the machine tool world? Come on, come on. How good does it get? You guys are amazing." And I had this one guy, Eric, used to say, "Dan, you're always saying that. Why do you say that?" I says, "Because I mean it. I mean, look what you're making. You're making parts that change the world. Somebody's sitting on a plane. Somebody's getting a medical test because you're making that part perfectly to print, and you take pride in that. Eric, can I look at that part?" And then he showed me the part. It's beautiful. I said,
Mm.
"I can't do that. I don't even want to take the time to do it. It's not something that interests me, but it interests you." And Eric just was so happy. His face lit right up. And he says, "I never thought about it that way." And I
Mm.
said, "You know what? I respect you. Do me a favor. Keep making great parts all the time. We'll get them shipped out. We'll get paid on them. And everybody gets taken care of. We continue to grow this business and take care of families here." So
Mm.
that's important. The people have to feel like they are part of a family. You got to genuinely care. And there's some characters in companies. You already know that. And some people are going to say that they're on board, and you know
Yeah.
better.
Right.
Some say they're on board, but soon as ownership leaves the room or something, here comes the gossip. And I always tell people, don't
Right.
don't do it. It's not gonna get you anywhere. Matter of
Yeah.
fact, it's going to make things worse. It's going to compound in a worse way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and because you get to work with so many great businesses that when there's that commitment at the top, when there's a vision for something more to continue to grow, but also changing that culture or changing that mindset, it's
Mm-hmm.
not an overnight thing. I've never seen it just change
Oh,
overnight. There's always going to be some friction, and there might be some people who decide that they don't want to be a part of that, and
mm-hmm.
say, gosh, yeah, this isn't where I want to go. And the benefits way weigh any of the negatives,
Right.
not only in, just coming to work every day and having this highly engaged, passionate,
Yeah.
excited workforce. But then, one of the studies that, I just came across was that when you have a highly effective team or a highly, engaged team, profits typically jump up by 15 to 25%. I mean,
Woo.
in this economy, especially,
Woo.
right, that's coming, it's like, how could you
See.
not? Any economy is
Beautiful.
like because it's true. The work or the things that seem like drudgery when we're not engaged, when it's you're not the right person for the job,
Right.
or you're just not in the right role.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't have the right mindset. You don't have the right tools.
Right.
There's some specific pieces there. Once you're highly engaged and you get somebody in there, it's like, man, I could do this all day.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even almost feel like I worked. I
Yeah.
did hard
Yeah.
work, but it's just
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
whole different energy, right? And
Right.
that's the
Right.
part that I think is so cool when you kind of find that sweet spot, which is why I love talking to you, because it's just like, man, I know that I could talk to you about this for hours.
Oh, I could too.
And
It's crazy.
yeah.
It's
And
crazy.
so, yeah,
I've learned
but
so much. I think of the reason that things that you have to deal with, and I had to deal with in a company was, if you tell somebody they can be an expert at something if they just practice 10,000 hours or 7 years straight, They're going to go, it's going to take that long. You mean it's going to take that long? Because here's what people want. They want the expediency factor. They
Right.
want it now. And they don't know how to avoid the path of least resistance, right? And
Mm.
when you get the path of least resistance, you go down this yellow brick road and it spells mediocrity.
Mm.
Mediocrity,
Yeah.
right? That's what it spells.
Yeah.
And that's not a road I want to take.
Mm-hmm.
Who wants to be mediocre? Because it's a
Yeah.
lot of hard work to commit. And going back to that word, decide, just commit.
Mm.
So if you decided and you committed to it, you'll go on the journey. People will go on the journey with you, Michael, and they should.
Yeah.
I think they need to
Yeah.
give people like you time to let the systems and the processes work. And then you start seeing, you've had it. You wouldn't be doing it if you didn't have your success stories. And I'm sure you've had some fall right back into their old ways. And it's very human nature. They go right back to the pigsty.
Yeah, yeah, and
Hate to say it like that, but yeah.
yeah, no, and it's true. I think that can be true for us in so many different ways, right? Personally, professionally, and relationships are sticky, and but I think there's a lot of hope there too, which I love. Where just jumping back to what you've mentioned, and then obviously the work I get to do of man, you are motivated, you're committed, you have the why, you have the purpose that's set in stone. And then you have some accountability, right? Whether that's, outside of your organization, you or myself coming in and helping kind of, keep that process going for leaders. And then that big one of, man, how do we celebrate? How do we make sure that these wins, these things that are happening, because I believe success builds on success. And like
I
you touched on
agree.
earlier, right? Failure can build on failure, and you can go down a really painful spiral in any area of life and kind of stay, like you said, in the pigsty. But gosh, it's so much more fun to slowly start making the changes that need to happen. And it just is incredible how any area, right? Our health, it could be with our relationships with our family, it could be with the culture of our team. It doesn't take as long as I think a lot of us think when we're in that spot, but how fun it is to see success build on success and grow. And then you sit back and you're just like, I can't believe where we were a year ago, where we're at today, or even 90 days. I love focusing on that 90-day time frame, because you can make a lot of changes.
Yeah, you can. That's a good
in
number.
90 days and really be consistent in, like you said, committing to something, and then it really becomes part of who you are.
Good.
And so, I love talking to you, Dan. I like I said,
I love your celebration.
We could probably talk all day.
Yeah, I love your celebration factor.
Here's, and I know you know this too.
We don't celebrate enough.
You talk about this a lot. You help people win at the game of life. Well, if you don't know what what the prize is, and you don't know how to get there, and you know what you're celebrating, then it's kind of hard to win, right? So
Michael,
I love that you focus on that and help people win, personally and professionally. And
I probably, wow. Go ahead. I have a habit of cutting people off. Sorry about that.
No, go ahead. Feel free to share.
I probably should have, at the beginning, but it's here now. You brought up something. I like the idea of celebrating, right? I really do. Because, you work hard, you do all these things, and you don't take time to celebrate, right? Because that's the joy, the fulfillment, the enrichment of something. Mm-hmm. And so I admire you bringing that up. I was in the backyard one day and I was writing out my own personal philosophy, because Jim Rohn said you need to do that. So I figured if Jim Rohn was an expert, like Brian Tracy says, if you want to be an expert at something, study the experts. There you go, right? So I wrote it out. I got a little bit of it from Jeffrey Gitomer, and I kind of played with it a little bit. But I have a fourfold philosophy, and that is to, one, empower people to see themselves and others better than they are. Because there's a lot of talent out there, and people have a lot inside of them. They just got to let it get out. Secondly, is to get better every day at what I do. There's the progress. There's the education. There's the growth. It can be a little bit every day. I go to the gym over at Rathbone Fitness, and I'm seeing people and they're struggling, and they look at me and I go, hey, you're making progress. If it doesn't feel like it, you're making progress. If it doesn't feel like it, you're making progress. And the fact is, you're here and you're doing it. You're not at home sitting around going, hey, I wonder if I should go to the gym. You are here. So get better every day and master your craft. And then third, build the very best relationships based on, and this is key, true appreciation for one another.
Mm.
And last but not least, on your celebration, that's what sparked it, was have fun every day doing what I do. And I find those times during the day to have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And that's part of my nature anyway, where, that's what keeps me going. That's actually my diet. That's my food for growth. Yeah. That's my food for
keeps
growth.
you fueled, right?
Yeah. Keeps me fueled.
Keeps you
Yeah.
going.
It keeps me fueled because if I don't do it, nobody else is going to do it for me.
Yeah. Gosh.
Crazy. Man, good stuff, huh, Michael?
Much. I love it.
This has been fun.
This has been really fun. Thank you, obviously, for sharing your story and just your wisdom and your passion for what you do. Maybe
I feel the
kind of
same.
help. Yeah, maybe you could help our listeners too, as we're kind of transitioning to the end here. What's one message of encouragement, or just an idea, something you would kind of want to leave them with, to help them continue on their journey?
Okay, so we are creatures of emotion. We're dealing with human beings. And so I'll leave you with this. There are some people that light up a room when they walk in, and others when they walk out. Now, think about that. Ponder that, because when you come in a room, I'm not talking about, hey, everybody. Now, you get those people. We get them. But you ever notice when you meet people, they set the tempo right away, and there's an energy there. I caught it with you. I caught it with you right away. And then, I'm not kidding, it was a half a second, and I liked it. It's probably one of the reasons we're here today, talking with one another, and sharing our stories. But be that person that comes in a room and people go, I like being around that person. I want to learn more from that person. I want to grow. What are you doing? Hey, Dan, what are you doing? And then, boy, little do they know, I'm going to grab them and say, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing that I'm not, that I sure like to benefit from, right? And learn.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty about personal growth and networking and being genuine about really caring about the other person, to say, hey, it's important that you benefit from this as I benefit. And that's the beauty of having coaches. Like you said, you have mentors. I have a mentor, I call him, in Cincinnati, Ohio, and he gets pretty tough with me sometimes. And I don't think I can take him if I had to, but anyway, he's kind of a tough guy. But we're past that anyway. He goes, oh yeah, those gloves, man. Oh, boxing, good job, Danny. That's like 1980 something. But anyway, all good stuff. And I would say, if there's one thing is be a student for life. School never gets out. And write out an acronym right in front of your desk. Put it on a 3x5 card. Put it wherever you can view it every day. And I want you to write out the word key, K-E-Y. And I want you to do it in a column. K at the top, E and Y. Keep educating yourself.
That's great.
And if you look at that every day, you're not making excuses, right? Because excuses are the nails that build houses of failure. And if you're not careful, you'll soon have a mansion built.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty crazy.
Gosh. So good, Dan. I love it. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, because I feel like it was encouraging to me. I feel more motivated. If there's folks listening where they're like, and you should, if you're listening, reach out to Dan and say, I need you to come and speak to our organization. I want to hear more from what you do. How can folks find you? How can they reach out to you?
Thank you very much, Michael. They can get a hold of me. You're going to see me on more than a few venues. LinkedIn. Tells you a whole background of my machine tool and, my speaking. And then also I have, on Instagram and on Facebook, I do have a website. All you have to do is go to Google, pop in Dan Prado, CEO, and you're going to see, the LinkedIn, the Instagram, you'll see home. When it says home, that's my website. And I was very fortunate. One of the guys, just amazing guy, Clay Guida, one of the toughest fighters that I know, one of the nicest guys. And you think I have energy? Woo, this guy is like he's flying all the time. And it's genuine. It's not any fake stuff making him fly, because he stays away from that stuff. He's pretty good that way. He was a great college wrestler, and he's now a UFC Hall of Famer for one of the greatest fights ever on UFC history. And he was even cool enough one time, he called me up and said, hey, help me write my speech for my Hall of Fame speech. And I remember I go, let me hear your speech. I go, I wouldn't change anything. Speak from the heart.
Mm.
I go, I might add one here. I'll add this. And he goes, good, right on. He calls me Mr. P. Thanks, Mr. P. Yeah. So
Wow.
they can find me there, and you'll
Mm-hmm.
see some pictures, some companies that I've done talks with. I really care about what I do. I really enjoy it a lot. But the most important thing is I want teams that I meet with to be empowered to take the next step. And then, really, and this is where I think is very important before we leave each other here today. What I bring is a certain expertise. And what you bring is an amazing expertise. And what a conduit it is to one another. It's the conduit. It's the very life, the blood, the existence of companies, right? That keeps the heart pumping. I can ask them to challenge themselves on a personal level in order for them to grow professionally. And then here comes Mr. Michael Wolsten, and I think that it'd be a huge benefit for them, is they're going to get the teamwork. They're going to get the leadership. They're going to get the engagement. They're going to get this. Now, a lot of what we do kind of overlaps, right? Kind of overlaps. But again, I think I get them to the surgery table so that they can cure whatever issues they have, and then you start working your magic. But I love it. Yeah, that's where they can get a hold of me. And
yeah, that's great, Dan. Thank you. Yeah, we're a good 1-2 punch, right?
Great. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, good combo.
Borrow your boxing there. Yeah.
Oh man,
No,
I think that's a great. No, I like that.
Yeah,
that is really good.
That's awesome.
Putting the combos together, 1-2 punch.
That's right. Well, you got a lot to teach me. I'm not great at boxing at all, but I so love your heart and your stories, and just what you got to share with us today, and so appreciate your time as well.
Awesome, Michael. Okay.
Awesome.
Well, listen, until we meet again, I always say keep winning in the game of life, and keep doing what you're doing, man. You're doing amazing things, and I'm proud of what you're doing and accomplishing, and how you're building teams and creating so much synergy. And as for me, I'm just glad God brought you into my life, because we have a lot of commonality in our business mindsets and stuff. So thank you. Awesome.
Same.
Okay.
Yeah, same.
Awesome. Brother.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.